Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coder's Workshop, a hopefully frequent show where I speak with Putnam about Dwarf Fortress and the things that they've been working on recently. In this particular episode, we're going to be covering loading graphics, modding music, optimizations, breaking things, and of course, UI and buttons, Mac and Linux ports, and DF Hack, and then the mainstream awards show, DICE, where Dwarf Fortress won Best Strategy Game. There are timestamps down in the description of this video for your convenience, and I hope that you enjoy the following show.
For the most part, it's been like a raw parsing overhaul, which would increase loading times and make it a bit easier to develop for one such as myself, but not really that much easier to develop. And basically, it wouldn't be noticeable for the end user, except that graphics RAWs are going to load a bit faster. I think that's the main thing, because that is like terrifying, that particular function. I haven't even started on that. That's something I've only been doing like if I need a break but don't want to stop actually working, then I start like plinking away at the raw parsing thing, because it's very zen work, and I know what needs to be done and all that, and it does need to be done, because like the DF hack people are complaining about this function being literally physically impossible for modern computers to like reverse engineer, and the compiler complains that it's using approximately 8 times as much stack space as should be allowed, and that sort of thing. When it says preparing graphics in the loading screen, that's when it's doing it. And you'll notice it takes a while, and most of that, to be clear, most of that taking a while is because it has to actually load the graphics into memory. It has to load them off of your hard disk drive, which is obviously, or your solid state drive, either of which is going to be a lot slower than like loading a single text file, because these are much bigger files. And but part of the reason it's so slow is because, and the reverse engineers will tell you this, because they can read the assembly even if the decompiling doesn't work. So every single one of the graphics like tokens you see in the insanely huge graphics like text files that are like a megabyte big, what it's doing is checking, am I looking at is the string that I'm looking at this token? Is it 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 this token? One at a time for every single one of those. Computers are fast, so that's not that slow actually, and most of the time is probably spent on loading the graphics, but it is slower than it could be. And if someone comes up with like some sort of mega graphics pack that has even more graphics for no discernible reason, then it would eventually become a problem, because overall, not just the reading the graphics it's like n times n for like amount of graphics RAWs times the amount of tokens there are in the graphics RAWs, which, I mean, m is essentially constant for each version, so it's not that bad, but it is bigger than it needs to be, and I could just make it on by making it like a hash table that associates with like an enum or something that it then switch cases through, and that's all O1. It's all very technical stuff. Actually related, another thing I did recently with loading the graphics that did make it faster, in the SDL2 version in particular, texture loading was O(n) squared, because it would go through the entire list of textures and see if any of them were null, and then override it if it was. And so as the amount of textures increased, that would just take more time each time. I just made it keep track of all the ones that are already. I just made it add, hey, this one's a free slot when you delete a texture, so it doesn't search through it every time. It just checks, hey, is there a free slot? No? Okay, I'll just add it to the end then. So yeah, graphics loading is getting a lot faster. I would make it multi-threaded. That's actually impossible, as it turns out. I looked into it. You can only do graphics stuff on the main thread. You are not allowed to do it otherwise with SDL2, so that's fun.
Just because of the way the game is like built, or
no, because of the way the library is built. I wouldn't be able to do it if I were starting from scratch. All sorts of things. That's the least important. The second thing I've been working on is, of course, just like trying to make the SDL2 version more better, more usable, just adding stuff to it. I brought in the DF hack changes that they proposed a while back into it, because I was already like overhauling G source a bunch, and I figured that would probably be for the best. The wonders of editing, I can just be as disorganized as possible as long as it all fits together at some point.
Yeah, but it makes my editing take longer, so that's not exactly optimal. But
that's true. It's a bit rude to do that. It's a bit rude to do that. I shouldn't lean on it. On the other hand, sound and music modding, like the ability to add your own sounds and music, I implemented that. It's all working. I tested it with the original music, just adding it to the rotation and making it the first song that plays on Embark. That all works. That is multi-threaded loading, because that's possible with the libraries we're using. You can just, like, ask it, hey, can you load these in, like, the thread pool, in some different thread, whatever. Like, just wait for it to finish. Once you need it, you can wait for it. But otherwise, just do it in the background. And that's all nice. So that doesn't, like, it's loading big files, but it won't add much to load times unless you're loading a lot of individual sound files, because there's a step in the loading that actually needs to check if the sound files are valid, and once it reaches that step, then it'll pause to wait for all of them to load. But that's after all of the text objects are already loaded, which is what takes about a quarter of the loading time, and computers are fast. This is something that you hear a lot. Computers are fast, so usually all the sound files will be loaded by then, so it shouldn't add much to loading times at all, and it's kind of nice. If people are using multiple different sound mods, like between different saves, it might cause like memory issues because it never unloads them. But that's probably not going to be an issue unless something really weird happens. Like, I mean, I was considering making SoundSense an entire mod before the game's release. Someone else will have to do that because that's time consuming.
I could go yell at one of my programmer friends, and I can make an official sound pack of just me making sounds with my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of SoundSense because that seemed to work, and most of what it did, like the current sound raw modding system, works to do most of what it did. It's just that you can't add new sounds. Well, you should be able to soon enough, so that's all good. That's the main stuff I've been working on. Besides, well, optimization that increased the game from 30 to 60 FPS with temperature off, doubling the speed of the game about. And I was surprised to find it worked. I just totally under the hood redid how units are allocated so that they're all in one big nice contiguous block. And I expected this to work well. I didn't expect it to work as well as it did. Like, it's a 40 to, I'd say it's a 50% performance improvement in large forts. But even like medium forts, like I tested it on Iron Shore and got like a 30 to 50% improvement.
Just on overall frame rate?
Yeah.
That's kind of massive. Any idea when that's gonna be coming in?
No, but hopefully soon. I mean, the release plans are opaque to me. I just set stuff up.
Yeah. No, I gotcha.
Well, they're not terribly opaque. I'm informed when like it's going to be soonish, at which point I like support what's going on at the time and wind down like a bit with doing weird stuff, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like try and tie up all the loose ends so stuff doesn't just explode randomly. But yeah, that's it. That's a huge performance increase. Jeez.
Which, I mean, it has exploded randomly, as you will recall, recently even. That was my fault.
Wait, embark button not working? That's the most recent one I remember breaking.
Yeah, that was my fault. Sorry about that.
That was a very funny 40 minutes.
It was working for me locally. I don't know what the problem was. I don't know I mean, apparently I missed an end bracket somewhere. That was the problem, which is kind of embarrassing, but also you'd think the compiler would. Well, I think I just moved it somewhere wrong in the process of like trying to undo the changes that added the tower complaint, which is still in there, and now I'm just so confused about everything. Yeah, this is why I've been avoiding touching the UI stuff too much, because it does, like, the way it's structured does confuse me quite a bit. And it'll eventually not, surely, but for now.
It's one hurdle that you're still kind of surmounting. Because like that's kind of the next thing I wanted to ask you about actually was UI stuff, because like I know that one of the most common things that I see at the very least in my YouTube comments section is just like, When are we going to have alphabetical sorting? When is everything getting a search bar? When, like, all of that kind of stuff? Has there been any progress in that regard at all? Or is that still something that's just kind of simmering until other problems are sorted?
I was actually, like, the next big thing I was going to do after SDL2, which is almost done, I'd say, sort of spinning my wheels. Like, all the music stuff just happened to be, like, sort of adjacent to the SDL2 stuff. Not even, like, something that was needed or anything like that. I was planning on making, like, trying to unify unit lists and such in a more, like, to keep things, like, able to be sorted and searched through as much as possible everywhere. Like, that was the next big thing I wanted to do, because it is, and, like, the ability to just, like, zoom in on all of your units wherever you are, that sort of thing. Have the little magnifying glass. Just unifying the functionality of units lists everywhere so that you can actually do things better. And of course, this is because every single time I play the game and start trying to add a bunch of military, like, militia dwarves, I just sort of, like, I sink down in my chair and go, oh, I need to fix this. I need to fix this. This is not fun. I need to fix this every time, because it's not good.
My solution to that is whenever I find a dwarf that I want to put in the military, I click on them and I rename them to just a wall of exclamation points and then just scroll until I find that. But it sucks.
That's awful.
Yeah, it's not optimal.
Like, I mean, no, your method's great. It's just that the fact that you have to do it, that's awful.
I want that button back of just being able to click on a dwarf, click on the military tab, and then just add them to a squad from the military tab. I want that button back, because that button used to be there. It used to be just press, like, up plus minus on the numpad and press enter. Done.
Right, I'll try to do that once I find once I find wherever the code for any of that is. I still haven't, actually.
That's incredible.
And you'd think I would have, because I find a lot of things by coincidence. I am very good at finding things once I actually need to. But I haven't had to, like, directly edit these things yet, so it doesn't. I mean, no, I found some of it. I found the nicknaming code places.
Yeah, it was very interesting the other day realizing that I couldn't nickname a vampire.
I legitimately do not know if that's a new bug. It could be.
Because, like, I actually went back to version 47 afterwards because I had a save that had a vampire just that lived in the walls, and I went and nicknamed him, and yeah, it works in the older versions.
Okay, so that is a problem then. Wonder what changed.
Yeah, it's because, like, there's some weird things with nicknaming right now. Because, like, it used to be if you'd nickname something and then go into Legends and search by the nickname, like in version 47, it would just, the nickname would pop up. You could search for the nickname in Legends. You can't do that now. There's some weird things going on with nicknamings, and just like military dwarves, if they get a notable kill, they lose their nickname. So you have to give them a custom role, which doesn't go away, unlike the nickname.
There isn't really a difference in how nicknames are structured. The main difference I noticed was that nicknaming stuff that doesn't have a name no longer, like, says it counts as having a name. So if you try to nickname a nameless, like a stray cat or whatever, then they won't have a visible name, even though you've nicknamed them.
You can give them a custom role, though, which is weird because it renames what type of animal they are, which is why I have, a giant puffin named Puffy, the vampire slayer, naturally.
Custom professions are, yeah, those are a bit less complex than names, which have all sorts of stuff associated with them. But I'm a bit weirded out that the nicknames act so differently now, because I'm not sure they are much different now. But then again, I don't know how they were, like, the data's all the same. I don't know how it all worked under the hood before version 50. So maybe there's a lot of differences that are just all over the place.
So the next kind of major topic here that I would like to touch on is, like, I know that you're working on SDL2 stuff, but people are still constantly talking about, like, native Mac and Linux builds. Do we have any kind of status report and update on that?
Native Linux builds and runs. Main problem, the single biggest problem, is that my computer is, like, dying or something. 2 weeks ago, it would take about, let's see, what was the longest time? It was 2019 seconds, which is, like, a bit bad for a single file. Yeah, 33 minutes for a single file, so it would take about 40 minutes to compile. Over the course of the next week, it just started slowing down massively to the point that it was taking 8 hours to compile.
Oh boy.
Which is really, really bad. And that's basically the only real issue in the way that, and like I managed to get together some stuff to reduce the amount of like libraries you still need to like have SDL2 installed, which anyone on like a Steam Deck will, so that's good. Classic Curses mode would take a lot of effort to get back together, so I haven't been like pushing that too hard because I don't want to make a huge undertaking a requirement to get a native port working, and it would be a pretty big undertaking from what I saw. But the native port does seem to be working, but it like we need to make sure the SDL2 version isn't going to like explode people's computers, and I've only really tested it thoroughly on my own. You know how that works, how that might be. It worked on my system that they say is their entire EVE Online destroying people's entire C drives. And in fact, in the STL2 version, I do notice that my the FPS counter during the loading screen is like incrementing rapidly and then ending up in the negatives, then incrementing rapidly again. And I think that's a bit mysterious, but I don't think it's causing too much. I doubt it's causing that much of an issue.
So how do you get negative frames per second?
I think it's just an overflow of the FPS counter, and I don't know why that's happening, but it doesn't seem to be an issue.
Oh.
I made the sound loading during the opening also multi-threaded because again that's allowed, so the opening loading time takes like approximately, sometimes it takes 20 or 30 seconds, but if you've opened the game recently, it's going to take approximately half a second now, so that's good. Mac stuff, legitimately, I think what Mac stuff requires is that I get a Mac, and then I put together all the libraries you need on Mac, write down all the stuff that you need there as I'm doing it, and where to get them. I run it, and it should just work like the Linux version does. Like, the setup for the Linux version is also the setup for the Mac version. They have very similar, I just need to, like, come up with, like, a, CMake script for that would work for both, and I did, hopefully. So that's all good. The native ports, yeah, they are, I would characterize them as done, like, pending more thorough, like, testing. Because, I mean, every time I've gotten testers to start doing stuff, I found they've immediately found something, like, horribly embarrassing that I should have noticed, which is what testers are for. I appreciate them. But, like, I was like, oh, wow, I don't know how I missed that. That's a bit embarrassing. I should fix that. I love that. That's great. It's best that this happens during testing and not when the game is fully released and people are like, hey, I need to, whenever I start typing into a text box, it doesn't work until I hit the second key. That was a real one from when we started testing in the SDL2 version. I did fix that. Right now, what DFHack does is it replaces SDL.dll with its own SDL.dll, which has all the core DFHack features in it, and it, like, just completely replaces the functionality, or it doesn't replace the functionality. It calls into SDLReal.dll in order to, like, have the actual stuff that SDL is supposed to do, and just sort of insert its own code in the middle. And of course, this is all very... I think I'm surprised antiviruses don't pick up on it more, because this is like, in literal terms, this is like a man-in-the-middle attack, but it's, pretty benign, all things considered. I mean, it is called hack, and it's a cheating... But it's a single-player game, who cares?
I definitely used to get, like, things from antivirus back in the day. I haven't recently, though. Although I also don't have anything aside from Windows Defender installed these days, so that might also have something to do with it.
Back in the day, every single individual hack was, like, its own executable file, so that was much worse for antiviruses. They hated that. But what the rework here does is that the game explicitly looks for a, like, dfhook.dll or lib_dfhook.dll SO or whatever, depending on your platform. And then it loads that in and it calls various functions from that at certain times to do the same thing DFHack used to do, but without having to replace the base DLL files for it. And the main thing this opens up is the ability to distribute DFHack through Steam or whatever. Not the Steam Workshop, because it still has to go into the base folder, but through Steam, like SKSE or Tmod Loader or whatever. I think that's what the plan is, maybe. I don't know. Even if that's not a thing, it's still easy enough to just drag and drop it in, and like verifying your game files won't like stomp DFHack anymore, which is what happens now if you try that. I personally kind of want to like see if it could be expanded a bit with more hooks into various things, but that's a bit long term. And of course, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. There's like a big table that contains all the global variables and their names that DFHack like looks for. That the first step in updating DFHack for a new version is to look for this table and then put everything down into the symbols.xml. I added the size of each individual global thing to that, which should make updating DFHack much faster. That sort of thing. I think DFHack is a very good, at the very least, like if I want to be as uncharitable as possible, it's an extremely important crutch to lean on for us until such time as things get more usable.
I have been using DFHack pretty frequently as of late to remove 750 undead Crundles.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
From my basement. I went from like 15 frames a second back up to 50.
Yeah, it's not great.
My current fortress.
I mean, that's actually an unusual example. Usually it's 750 amphibian men or something.
Oh, I've turned those off. Like, they can only spawn 2 at a time, so they generally don't cause problems. I've just got them at very, very, very low numbers. I've completely nerfed them down into nothing in the difficulty options.
Yeah, that should probably be a bit of a thing. Sanity checks on like, hey, are there already 500 cavern invaders? Maybe don't send more. That sort of thing.
Yeah, they shouldn't exceed the size of a normal siege, and in my opinion, unless the player intentionally increases that number, they should be significantly smaller than a siege. But because the ambushes can really, like, just from like a playability perspective, really frustrate a lot of people, because you'll just have like, your dwarves running out there and gathering stuff. Unless you're like super careful and like sealing off every entryway, like you're just gonna randomly lose peasants to them, even if like. Even if you are actively patrolling and looking for them, because they will just hide in a tree and ambush somebody, and it's like, well, they're dead before your military gets there.
Yeah, well, usually it's just visiting scholars or whatever.
Yeah, or the at random beast hunter or whoever happens to be showing up.
Hey, that's what they were doing in the first place. They knew the risks.
It's not their fault they only brought a book as a weapon. But although sometimes those books can be pretty effective, especially when they're made of like platinum.
Yeah, platinum book, 300 pages. The pages don't matter, I think, for this, which is unfortunate.
So my kind of fun bonus question to kind of wrap this little chat up here is Dwarf Fortress just won Best Strategy Game at DICE Awards. And I'm curious, how does it feel to now not only be working on Dwarf Fortress, but DICE Awards Best Strategy Game 2022?
I don't know. My brain already slotted the game into like Museum of Modern Art exhibit. It's really good. It's cool. I didn't expect it. Like legitimately, when I saw I was following the news like anyone, like any other random person, so I didn't have any insider knowledge on this. So I was surprised it won. And that's pretty cool. But like it's hard to value the game more highly than I already was.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I'm for me, it's really cool to see it, because it's like from my perspective, like the art museum, the art exhibit stuff is neat, but it's neat in kind of video games don't normally get that kind of recognition, because that's not normally where video games are recognized. So it's recognition, but in kind of in a different way. This is like, yo, you just won a mainstream gaming award. Like, this is the big video games thing that matters to me from the like video game audience kind of thing. And there was nothing funnier than just like watching the IGN stream of DICE and then suddenly seeing a bunch of what? And like, yeah, of course Dwarf Fortress wins over Marvel's Midnight Suns. That's it.
Hey, to be fair, I think the XCOM people actually made that one, so it's
They did.
But actually, you know what? When you say it that way, yeah, it did beat like some AAA stuff that all the big streamers played a lot of or whatever. And that's pretty good. Yeah, the mainstream recognition is actually a bit wild, and it's really wild because I like still sometimes like engage in regular community discussions where there's speculation and such, and then I like have to, slow down. Like, oh, wait a second, I'm just speculating. I have to realize that sometimes, people expect what I say to be true. Used to be that I was just a random person, and if I'm a random person who's wrong on the internet, well, that there's a billion of those every day. Who cares? Now I'm not a random person, and if I'm wrong on the internet, that means that means something. Oh no.
Time to make alt accounts. But I just wanted to say thank you very much for chatting with me about Dwarf Fortress things, and hopefully we'll get to do this again soon in the near future.
It's nice to not just give like news quote unquote as like in the format of just like saying on Discord what I've been doing, because that's not going to stick around. Nobody's going to be able to reference that or anything.
I've seen a lot of people actually like lamenting like the death of forums and kind of a lot of stuff moving to Discord, not because like it's a bad form of communication, but because it's not searchable, right? It's all like cornered off in its own portion of space. And if you go and Google something, you're not going to get like something that was posted in a Discord server at 4:30 in the morning 6 months ago. You're not even going to know that that post existed. And then if that Discord server goes away, that conversation's gone, right? Like it's not archived and searchable in the way that it used to be, and not everybody's in the Kitfox server to this point. So like it's good to get information out in a way where people can find it.
It's a bad form of communication, but like it's a bit equivocating because there's different senses of communication here. There's communication in the sense of like two people talking with each other. Discord's great for that. There's communication in the sense of like announcing things are happening. Discord's awful for that.
I think I'm going to wrap up this recording. I just want to say thank you very much once again for taking the time to record, and talk to you next time. Now that you've made it to the end of the video, I would just like to say, if you enjoy this type of content and you would like to support me and my work directly, you can do that via my Patreon or YouTube members, or you could get yourself a Vile Mug of Darkness over on my merchandise store. In a couple of days, on the 1st, I will be releasing a few more t-shirts for you to have a peek at if you decide you like the clothing designs. Also worth noting, for those of you who got concerned with the previous interview that I uploaded with Putnam, over on my Patreon, the full unedited audio is available, awkward ums and all. However, if for some reason you can't afford $1 a month, simply DM me and I will send it to you. Although, frankly, this edited version doesn't actually remove any of the interesting information, and in my opinion, is superior to the uncut audio, but if that's what you would like, you can have it. Simply reach out. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.